So this is another one of my favorite kitchen foods. It's also a great medicine. I've been making this every year for probably 20 or 25 years, maybe even longer. And quite honestly, I don't even know where I got the recipe. I don't know who told me how and taught me how to do it. It's always fun to remember to pass the teachers along, but I've been making it for so long that just like, you know, I think it's got my own little stamp of Rosemary's formula on it now. And as you learn to make it and you start making it and you add your own little things, it'll be your formula. That's the fun about these herbal products. So what's so great about this particular recipe is it's another one of those hot, circulatory, immuno-enhancing formulas. It has horseradish in it. Horseradish actually is a food, and it's a wonderful culinary food. It's especially loved by people who eat a lot of rich food because it aids in digestion. We usually think of it as a really good herb for digestion, and classically it was used in like heavy pot roast types of meals because it actually helped with the digestion of all that fatty, heavy food. But it's my number one favorite remedy for bad sinus infections and mild sinus infections too. But when that sinus infection gets up into your sinuses and really blocks those sinuses, when there's a lot of headache from it and a lot of congestion, nothing works better than a good horseradish root. And so every single fall I dig up a good root, or I purchase one at the local store, and I wrap it. You have to kind of wrap it. I hate to say I wrap it in like a plastic wrap, but that keeps it really fresh. You can wrap it in fabric as well, like a muslin bag, but you'll want to keep that bag moist, otherwise it will dry out. So actually this horseradish, this is August here on our mountain. It's not quite time, it's a little too early to dig our fall root. So this is my horseradish root that was left over. I didn't use a whole lot of it last winter, which means I didn't have very many sinus infections that I was working with in our community. But normally one root is gone in about a season. So we had a mild winter. But so horseradish is a wonderful digestive aid. In this particular formula, which crosses over between being both a food and a medicine, we're putting it in because it opens up the sinuses. It's really good for enhancing sinus health. And also because it's warming and circulatory and moves energy in the body, it's also really good in the wintertime when our systems get a little congested and slow down. So we can think of horseradish as an immuno-enhancer, though it's not classically categorized as that, but it definitely can be seen as that. And we're going to use lots of garlic. Garlic, again, is really probably one of the most famous culinary herbs and also one of the most famous medicines. It's been called poor man's penicillin because it is a natural antiseptic herb. It helps to fight bacterial infections and viral infections. It's a very famous part of that old 4 Thieves vinegar, which grew fame during the terrible epidemics, the Black Plague of the Middle Ages, when really literally hundreds of thousands of people died. In fact, some of those cities, more people died in those cities than were left alive, places like Siena and Florence. And there was the 4 Thieves vinegar, which this is kind of a variation of. It's actually not the same thing, but it's similar and close to that. The 4 Thieves vinegar, there was these 4 young boys that were grave diggers, grave robbers, and they would go in and rob the graves, which was not a very good profession by any means. But when they were finally caught, they had this recipe that they used that included a lot of garlic and different herbs in a vinegar base that they took to keep the plague away. How true that story is, we don't know, but it's been passed down in numerous versions for hundreds of years. So we're going to trust that there's some truth to it. We're also going to, in our formula, in this formula, we think of it as warming the blood, great for the heart, as an amazing herb that fights infections in the body. And it also adds that wonderful garlicky-like flavor that's so, I don't know, reassuring, especially in cold weather. We're also going to add some, another allium, a kissing cousin of garlic, is the onion. And the onion, kind of a lowly vegetable, but what would you do in the kitchen without it? It's so incredibly versatile. And onion was used even by my mother and my grandmother, and certainly by our ancestors for all kinds of medicinal purposes. It was considered to be one of the best poultices when there was infections in the ear. A hot onion poultice wrapped up in the onions would be sauteed over a cast iron skillet. And when they were nice and warm and kind of mushy, you'd wrap them up in cloth and put them over the ears. And even today, that's a really super good recipe remedy when there's a lot of congestion in the ears. And also I make one of my favorite syrups out of honey. It was an old-fashioned syrup that I started making when I first left home and I was living in the really way back wilderness of British Columbia. I was really poor. I didn't have a lot, but I had onions and honey, and I would slice the onions and I'd put them on the back of the wood stove with a little bit of honey, just enough honey to cover it. And all during the winter, I would use that honey cough syrup to keep my immune system healthy, and also I'd use it if I started getting coughs. So onion is used a lot, and we're going to put it in here just as another wonderful herb in our formula. And here's another one of our culinary wonders is ginger. This is a nice little organic ginger. You can actually cultivate ginger in pots. I usually just lay them on the surface. I cover them with just a slight little bit of dirt. You can't put too much dirt on them because if you do, they'll rot. They're a rhizome. They like to be on the top. And you keep that moist. You know, they grow in tropical, warm, moist areas. So keep it warm and moist, and you'll start to sprout your ginger. They go dormant in the winter, but they're really nice in the summertime. I have a few pots of ginger and turmeric and even cardamom growing in Vermont, if you can imagine. So ginger is another wonderful herb for the immune system. It aids in digestion. It keeps the blood running through the body. That sounds funny. Keeps circulation going in the body. So for all of these reasons, we're going to chop these up, grate them, and put them in here. And you can use different proportions. I generally use equal parts of garlic and horseradish, and equal parts of onion, and then about half part of ginger. The ginger has a very strong, overpowering flavor like garlic and horseradish and onions don't. But I usually use a little bit of less ginger. And again, it's just personal taste. When we chop those up and we add them to the jar, I'm going to cover them with apple cider vinegar. I'm basically making a tincture, but I'm using vinegar as our solvent. I'm using vinegar here because I want this to be more of a food than a alcoholic medicine. I want to be able to put it on my salad dressing. I want to take little shot glasses of it when I'm starting to feel a little sick. I don't really want to have a heavy alcoholic potion. I want to use the vinegar. It makes it more versatile. It makes it something that you can give more to your children and family members who might not be so prone to want to take an alcoholic tincture. So we're going to use vinegar as our medium. I might also say the vinegar in this particular formula just enhances the flavor. Where alcohol wouldn't enhance the flavor, it would make it taste very much like an alcoholic tincture. Once we add the vinegar, we're going to add just a little bit of cayenne. This is probably the only place you have to be very careful. I would say to add to this quart jar probably no more than a quarter of a teaspoon of cayenne. For those of you who are really hotties, you might want to add a half a teaspoon, but that's going to be really hot, like cayenne cult hot. So usually about a quarter of a teaspoon. And then I'm going to chop all this up, and maybe I'll get some help chopping. Chop, chop, chop. And we're going to chop it into kind of little pieces. So we got this all chopped up, and we filled it up beautifully. This is going to be my winter fire cider. And I'm covering it with this delicious organic vinegar. I might say that, vinegar itself is a really nice food. A natural vinegar that hasn't been pasteurized, so all those enzymes are still alive in it. So this also adds and enhances this particular remedy. And I'm going to add, I love hot stuff, but I've learned that much more than a quarter of a spoon of cayenne is going to be a lot in there. So I'm going to put that in, and I'm just going to shake it up. And then I'm going to do a little taste and make sure that I've got it hot enough. I want that heat to kind of permeate in this. Let's see what it tastes like. I think that's just perfect. It's got a little bite to There it is.
Quick, get her water.
And then you can see that remedy just working. My ears are turning on fire. My hair is starting to stand up. It's definitely a good remedy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this sit for 4 weeks. It just doesn't have to sit a long time. Everything in there is so soluble in this vinegar. It'll break down really quick. By breaking down, I just mean that the vinegar is a solvent. It's extracting the constituents into this vinegar. So really just 4 weeks is plenty, a long time. Might even be done before that. And at the end of that time, I strain it. There's sometimes a tendency to leave these herbs in there a long time. You can definitely leave them in longer than 4 weeks. But after a while, they will start to really break down. The actual cellular walls of these plants will break down, and the stuff gets a little gunky. So when you think it's perfect, like in that 4 to 6 week time, I'd really suggest straining it. And then what you're going to do that makes this remedy absolutely delicious, one of those really, really good kitchen remedies, is you're going to add honey to it. And the amount that you add to your vinegar, strain it first, and so you just have your liquid. The amount that you're going to add is just to taste. So what you have is a hot, pungent, fiery, sweet preparation. And as I said, you could add that to salad dressing. I like to just take a little shot glass and just put it in there in the wintertime and just toke it down. I can feel my blood running. I can feel my ears getting good. For people who get older like I am, as I said, I'm kind of a mini elder here, oftentimes your system gets a little more sluggish and things slow down a little bit, which is a good thing. But you don't want your stomach and your digestion to get sluggish. And so this combination of these wonderful heat-warming, heat-producing herbs and also digestive aids really help to keep things moving in your system. None of these herbs are laxatives, so you're not having a laxative-like effect, but you're actually moving things through your body. And being that I'm of that constitution that's kind of tends to be a little more cold, I live in a really cold climate. I'm also a vegetarian, so all of that enhances that kind of cool, cold conditions. So I have to use things that are warming. If you tend to be really fiery and have a lot of heat and excess heat, you can tell that because you oftentimes have a really ruddy type complexion. You have really good metabolism. You tend to be, oftentimes people have a lot of fire, tend to be hypertense, they get hypertension easily. You might find that this particular remedy isn't the best remedy for you because it will enhance that heat. So it's just really good to understand those simple energetics of food. You can usually tell in yourself, you can tell by how something makes you feel. If you're not sure before you take it, you just want to pay attention to how it feels when you put it in your mouth and how your system responds to it. We often don't pay enough attention to those things, but usually our body is very wise. It has this incredible inherent wisdom. It has this desire and need to survive and to help you survive. And if we pay attention to that inherent wisdom, we oftentimes are doing the right thing for ourselves. So one of my favorite remedies is definitely a good constitutional remedy for me and anybody who tends to be a little bit more cold or who lives in a really cold climate like I do.